Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Disappointing Your Demons. I am Ron, grateful recovering alcoholic. Um, just want to say that I really appreciate everybody's support over the last two videos that I've made and everybody that's reached out to me. It means the world to me, and it's amazing that I have as many views and subscribers as I do, so I really appreciate that so very much. With that being said, if you could, here we go with the YouTube business stuff, like and subscribe and share and all that good stuff. I just want these videos to reach as many people as possible. And again, just appreciate everything so much. So I think where I left off last time was my ex-wife, so my girlfriend at the time, future wife, and then future ex-wife, told me that she was pregnant. And I just want to clarify something, because there's been a couple of people that asked me. No, I don't feel like she tricked me. No, I don't feel like she was just saying stuff to say stuff. She really legitimately thought that she was unable to get pregnant. And who knows what would have happened moving forward if she hadn't gotten pregnant. Would we have ended up getting married? I don't know. Would we have ended up staying together in the long run? I don't know. But that's all a moot point, because she did get pregnant. And, like I said, when I found out that she was pregnant, my first thought was, or my third thought was really, I hope they don't end up like me. And that was and always will be a very big fear of mine in regards to my children. So found out she was pregnant, and then my dad, being the hardcore Sicilian that he is, and old fashioned and everything, when we told him, he just looked at me and he says, "You're going to do the right thing, right?" And that wasn't a question. It was definitely not a question. So yeah, told my dad, "Yeah, Dad, I'm going to do the right thing." But waited a year before I proposed to her. We bought a condo together, and waited a year to propose to her, right before my oldest daughter came along. And things were good. So I had never really had a real relationship before my ex-wife, and I also never lived on my own until I moved in with her. I went right from living with my parents to moving in with her and having a baby, and also being in a relationship. So I didn't really know, also numbing myself emotionally with drugs and alcohol over the years. I didn't really know what it was like to care about somebody else, or to fall in love, or to love somebody. I liked her a lot, and eventually, we spent all of our time together, but I loved her. But I didn't also know really what the true meaning of that word was, if that makes any sense. So again, we moved in together, and a little bit of a side note, my dad, I want to say that I'm kind of I'm not trying to make him out to be a bad person or a bad father. It was the exact opposite. He was awesome in so many ways. Did he ever temper? Yes. Did he, hit me and stuff when I got in trouble? Yes. Things like that. And also, the example that I had for a marriage from my mom and dad is that my dad was just constantly screamed at my mother whenever she did anything to aggravate him or whatever. And so that is the example that I had growing up of what it was like to be married and how you're supposed to treat your significant other. And fairly soon into it, moving in together, relationships start, running into arguments, and you're living together and there's no separation. You can't just go home. I followed suit with my father, and I would yell at Nettie, especially when I would get drunk. I would holler at her, something fierce, and she didn't deserve that, but it was all I knew. And I'm not excusing myself per se, but when you're taught one way and you think that's how it's supposed to be, you don't necessarily think that you're doing anything wrong either. So there was all of that, and again, the drinking certainly didn't help. But then Mari, like a year after we got together, I proposed to her, and Mari came along shortly thereafter, and so now I have a baby on top of everything. So added the stress in of having a baby, and wanting to still go out and drink, but also trying to be a father, be a husband. It was a lot, and it kind of made things worse and gave me resentments towards my wife. So all along going down this road of marriage and having a family, I didn't really know what the hell I was doing, and I guess nobody does, but I tried my best. I really did. But I always had, I feel like I had imposter syndrome. Like, this wasn't what I had intended, and now I felt like I was playing a role of husband, playing a role of father. As the kids got older, Abby came along, and then my youngest, Jace. I would go to the the soccer games, and I would go to the school functions and things like that, and I always felt just like an imposter, like I was playing a role as opposed to actually being a father or being a husband. And all the while, the alcohol is really taking a toll on all of them. Like, I literally feel like I held them hostage for 11 years while I lived with them. They just never knew what me they were going to get, whether I was going to come home from work and have a few beers or whatever and turn and be angry, or turn and be sad, or turn and be happy, whatever it was. Like, they just never knew what they were going to get, and I feel like they were always constantly walking on eggshells around me, which is no way for them to live. But just to give you a basic idea of how I was in this marriage, and in as a father in my kids' lives, there were definitely times, I love my daughters unconditionally. They are my world, and I'm maniacally protective of the three of them. They'll tell you that if there was something, I would kill for them, for real. I would kill for them, or I would die for them both. I just love them so much. They are my world. But they weren't as big in my life as alcohol was. They weren't as important as alcohol was. And the type of husband and father that I was, I could probably sing every song from Blue's Clues, word for word, still to this day, though. I always loved watching Blue's Clues with my kids, and singing the songs and dancing with them. That was always so much fun. But the dark side of all of it was that, for example, when Mari was on the way, Nettie had gone out and bought all sorts of baby stuff. She got this brand new baby bath, and she was so proud of it because it had all sorts of, I don't know how elaborate a baby bath can be, but apparently it's pretty elaborate and has different things that are super special. But she went out and she bought it, and she was so proud of it, and she was showing it to me. And later that night, I came home from the bar absolutely wasted, crawled upstairs into the bathroom and puked all in it and ruined it. Times that I wanted to go back out drinking, my wife is trying to tell me to stop. And when she was 6 months pregnant with Abby, I was literally wrestling with her to get the keys out of her hand so I could get my car and go back out and drink. Just things like that. My oldest was sick, and I wanted to go out and play poker with the boys, and she was like really, really sick, like puking, couldn't stop puking, been puking for days, high fever. And all my wife wanted me to do was stay and not go out drinking, not go out to play poker, and be there in case there was an emergency. Well, of course there was an emergency. We ended up having to go to the hospital with her. And I come home very late, hammered, and, she has to drive the three of us to Hasbro Children's Hospital to go to the emergency room for my oldest, for Mari. And it was just things like that. Just built up, and I that's how I lived. And yes, I had some sobriety in there. Not really sobriety. I would quit drinking when it got too much for Nettie, for my ex-wife. And I would, I think the longest I went was like maybe almost a year without touching a drink, but I was white knuckling it. I wasn't in AA. I wasn't have any sort of recovery program, so it was an even more of a nightmare. And then of course the way that it goes is that, I'm going to just only drink wine because I don't really like wine. But next thing you know, one glass of wine turns into 2 big ass bottles of wine, and I'm waking up the next day with the worst hangover and red teeth from drinking so much wine. So yeah, it was like that. And I remember one year, it was a 4th of July party. I drank so much, I literally went like nuts. But my wife counted the beers that I had at that 4th of July party, and she told me that I drank 42 beers in one day. And I ended up punching a hole in the closet door, screaming at people, things like that, making an ass out of myself, really. And like, who does that? Like, that's not normal drinking. Like, I thought it was just fine. I thought it was normal. Like, I thought maybe I overdid it yesterday. 42 beers is a lot, but it wasn't too out of control. But little by slow, people stopped coming over, stopped coming to the cookouts, didn't want to hang around because I would always make a scene. I would, do crazy things. I would yell at people or start fights with my wife in front of everybody. And eventually just nobody came over. Nobody wanted to be around us or around me, which was, fine by me because I wanted to be left alone anyways. But my wife, she wanted friends. She wanted a social life. She just wanted her husband to be a good husband. I mean, that shouldn't be too much to ask for, right? But instead, I just kept drinking. And, I was definitely a daily drinker at that point. I would have at least, and nowadays it doesn't seem like this was even that much, but, I would have at least a 6-pack to a 12-pack per night. And on the weekends, it was anybody's guess as to how much I was going to drink. And just kept deteriorating and taking a toll on my family. And in the meantime, my parents and myself and my wife, we all bought a house together. And so my parents are now in the house, and they're having to see just how bad I've become and how far down the scale I've gone. And I still keep going lower and lower. I don't even know how she put up with me for as long as she did. And I don't even want to say it culminated. Like, I ended up cheating on her. Probably a couple of years before we ended up actually getting divorced. But I ended up cheating on her with somebody that this person, it couldn't have been anybody more hurtful, really, for me to have cheated on her with. And still, she gave me a second chance. Or at this point, gave me chance number 1,513, which she shouldn't have done. But she didn't want to kick me out because she didn't want to break up the family. She didn't want to have my kids have to lose their father. But hindsight being 2020, the damage that I was doing and the fights that we were having were probably far more detrimental to my children than it would have been had she just told me to get out a long time before that. And it's hard, like, to like admit this. Like, I mean, I was a shitty husband. I was a shitty person and a shitty husband. And especially when I'm drinking, I lie for the sake of lying. Like, there's things like that I think about that she tells me that I lied about. It's like, why would I even lie about that? That's so stupid. But it's just, it's the way that I am when I am drinking and drugging. And I wasn't actually, well, sorry, I wasn't drugging when I was raising my children and married. I was just drinking. But anyways, one day it came to a head. It came to a, it was bad. So I had, like I said, quit drinking for a year, and then started drinking again. And what happens with me, when I stop and then start again, the drinking gets twice as bad as it was from before I stopped. So started drinking again, and so fast it went downhill. The last straw for my wife was one night. We we One night, so it was a Pawtucket Red Sox game, and I ran the family shop, so me and the employees and my oldest daughter all went to the baseball game, and it was all paid for by this tire company, because we were an authorized Michelin dealer, and everything that goes along with that. So it was all paid for. We got like luxury seats, whatever, and I just started partying with my friends and my employees rather, and my oldest daughter is there, and she's just watching me get absolutely blitzed. And I was just drinking beer after beer, and even my oldest daughter, she's like, "Dad, you think you should have another drink? Do you think I'm like, yeah, shut up, kid? You don't know what you're talking about." And even my employees like, "Well, Ron, you're drinking a lot. Like, you kind of want to slow down." But I also had a really bad temper back then, and they didn't want to like set me off, so I was just like, "No, I'm fine," and that was the end of that. Anyways, I had driven to the game. I had this big black Cadillac that was some guy who owned it before me had it stretched so I could fit everybody in it. And my employee had to drive all of us home, because I couldn't drive anymore. And then what type of an example am I setting for everybody? My employees, my daughter. So he drives us home, and I want to go back out and party some more. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, "Yeah, let's go, let's party." And they're all like, "No, we think we're gonna go home." And I'm like, "No, we're going out to fucking party." Remember that? And they were like, "Oh, okay, we'll wait for you." So I go inside, walk my daughter inside, and I had beer in the fridge. I grab a beer in the fridge and out of the fridge, and Mari, I remember, says to me, like, pleading with me, "Dad, don't go back out. You've already had enough to drink, Dad. You've really had enough to drink. Just please stay home. Like, you can drink some more tomorrow, Dad. You've got beer in the fridge. Just stay home." And she's like only like 11 or something like that, and she's having like, having to plead with her father to not go out and drink anymore. So I fucking scream at her at the top of my lungs, so loud that the people out in the driveway can hear me screaming at my daughter, screaming at my wife when my wife tells me to freaking stop screaming at my daughter, and just hollering at her all sorts of mean, nasty things to the two of them. And she runs into her room crying, and she just says, "Dad, I just didn't want you to drink." And she closed the door. And I went to go outside, and my employees had gone. They left. They took my car. I believe, yeah, they took my car and they left, and said to my wife that they were going to bring it back the next day. So I'm furious. I am furious. I'm yelling and screaming. I'm throwing stuff. And somehow, some way, my wife got me calmed down, or maybe I just went and laid down and passed out and whatever. And the following morning, I wake up, my head feels like it's freaking about ready to split in two. Trying to piece together what happened the night before. I remember like having that feeling like, oh, I fucked up. I feel like I fucked up pretty big. But all right, well, let's go see what's going on. And I walk out of the bedroom and wandering around, and there's nobody home. I'm like, huh, all right. Well, that's okay. And then first thing I do, if I'm remembering correctly, is I go to the fridge and I go to grab a beer. And next thing I know, the door opens up as I'm reaching for a beer, and it's my wife. She comes in, she sits down in the living room. She goes, Ron, come in here. I need to talk to you. So I go in, I'm hungover and I don't want to deal with any of this shit. So I sit down and I'm just like, what? She's like, do you remember what you did last night? And I was like, yeah, I remember, I was blaming it all on Mari. I said Mari's being like a little brat or something. And Nettie goes, no, Ron, she wasn't. She was just trying to make sure that you were safe and that you didn't go out drinking anymore because you already drank so much. And she saw you really drunk at the game and she was worried about you. She's like, but you screamed at her. And she said, and so then I kind of looked and I said, okay. I said, well, where are they? And she goes, they're not here. She goes, I left them someplace safe. She's like, I have 911 on speed dial. In case you go crazy or whatever. And she goes, but this is the last straw, Ron. She goes, you've got to go. You've got to leave. She says, I'm not having you here anymore hurting us the way that you're hurting us. I'm not having you here anymore yelling, screaming at the children the way that you do. She says, it's time for you to go. She goes, and if you don't leave peacefully, she goes, I'm calling the cops and they'll take you out of here. And I just kind of looked at her and I said, okay. All right, I'm out. I didn't fucking care. Like I didn't care. All I wanted to do, my head was hurting so bad, all I wanted to do was sit back and have a beer, whatever. Now she's telling me to get out. And the first thought through my head was, now I can drink without having to worry about being nagged. I didn't care that she just told me I'm losing my family. I didn't care that she just told me to get out and I have nowhere to go. All I cared about was that I get to drink the way that I want to drink now. And she told me, and this, I can't believe that she did this. Her sister worked at a hotel. She found me a hotel room for cheap. And she told me that that's where we were going. And just to grab some clothes, whatever I thought I needed. And what was the first thing that I went and grabbed? Was the rest of the beers that were in the fridge. Not clothes, not anything important, my beer. I grabbed that. I packed, half a suitcase full of clothes. I was going to figure it out later. And she dropped me off at the hotel. Well, she pulled up to the hotel and she says, Ron, she goes, if you ever want your family back, you ever want to see your kids again, she goes, you need to get help. And I said, fuck that. Fucking help. Whatever. Fuck you. Got out of the car, checked into the hotel. So I proceeded to drink all the beers that I had. There was a 99 pub right in the parking lot of the hotel. I went over there and drank a ton of beers. Somehow talked a couple that were there into driving me to a liquor store to get cigarettes and more beer and bring me back to the hotel. I didn't care until the next morning. I woke up and realized where I was, realized what was going on, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, Like, really, you're throwing this all away because of your drinking, because you want to drink, because you don't want to be responsible for your children who you love so much. You don't want to have a wife that nags you to not drink, to not do things, just to be a better person. So I called my ex-wife. I called my wife. She answers the phone. She's like, yeah. I was like, I need help. That was the first time I've ever said those words about my drinking or my drugging really, was, I need help. I can't do this anymore. You're right. I need help. So this woman finds a detox for me to go to, does all of the legwork while I'm just sitting miserable in the hotel room. And she comes by later that day with my kids, with my girls. She tells me that she found me a bed at this place called the Norcap Lodge in Foxborough, Mass. She says they don't have one right now, but they'll have one available tomorrow. She says, I'll be back tomorrow, but for right now, I just want you to talk to the kids. We need to explain to them what's going on. And so we did. I explained to them, I said, Dad, he can't come home for a little while because he's got a problem and that he needs to get taken care of. Of course, the girls all start crying. They want me to come home. My youngest was really young at the time. I think she was like 3. So she didn't quite understand what's going on. And she had a funny way of talking when she was little. She says, Daddy can't come home because he drank too many beards. But I told him, I says, I'm going to get better. I'm going to get better. And my middle kid had this little stuffed shark that she called Sharky that she carried with her wherever she went. I bought it for her at the Mystic Aquarium. I think we had gone to it on a trip like that summer or something like that. She always carried it with her everywhere, and she runs up to me and she goes, Dad, she goes, here. She goes, I want you to have Sharky. Sharky will protect you. And if you're ever scared or lonely, just hug on him and he'll protect you. And just think of us and you'll be okay. And so the very next day, my wife comes, she picks me up. She wasn't nice. She wasn't like, oh, yay, you're going to fucking detox rehab. We're going to be a happy family again. She just pulls up. She tells me, very matter of fact, she's like, I love you. She goes, you're sick. I just want you to get help, and I want you to get healthy, and I want you to get better. That's the only thing you need to worry about right now. And with that, she dropped me off. I went in and got my introduction to recovery. Got my introduction to what addiction and alcoholism is really all about and where it takes you. They say that alcoholism, you end up with death, jail, or institutions. Well, I'd spent a couple of overnights in jail a few times because of alcohol. And now I'm going to be institutionalized because of alcohol. So what's the next step after that? Well, I wasn't going to let that happen. So I think that's all I got for today. We'll end it there. That's a pretty good spot to end it at. And next video, we will talk about my journey from detox moving forward and my introduction to recovery. All right, thank you very much for watching, guys. Again, please hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Please share this with anybody that you think might benefit from hearing it. Thank you very much. Have a great day.